I'm just a boy from Kansas out to save the world from chronic disease. And I truly mean that. Nobody is in control of your health but you. I can't heal you. Your doctor can't heal you. You have to heal you. And it's all about having the education and empowerment to know what you need to be changing within yourself, within your life, to set your soul free and accomplish that best life that we all like to talk about. And I truly believe that the greatest medicine of all is to teach people how not to need it. I'm Brendan Vermeyer, the original Holistic Savage. Welcome to the Holistic Savage podcast.
Boom. It's time. Man, I love this microphone. So, my friend, my good friend, John Parker, one of my best bros, welcome to the Holistic Savage podcast, where we're about all things functional medicine, functional fitness, functional spirituality, functional psychology. And at the end of the day, it's all about this thing behind me. Grace Medicine Balls teach people how not to need it. So for all of those in attendance, my very good friend, John Parker, what is up, homie?
Hey, Brendan, I've been looking forward to this since we scheduled it. So I'm grateful to be here as always. And you're one of my brothers, like you said in the beginning. So I'm always interested in what you have to say about things that I know, things that I don't know. And it's an honor, just like any other time I talk to you.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate that. This is gonna be a fun episode, I can tell, because gosh, there's so many. So I always like to briefly kind of, how do I know the person I'm talking to? And for those that end up listening to this episode, JP is one of my really good friends, one of my brothers, and we're both these kind of hybrid FDN / fitness professional. And I don't think there's enough of these majestical hybrids. Mm-hmm. What an egotistical way to start the conversation. But JP, if someone was to approach you at, let's say, Paleo FX, and I'm imagining when we were at Paleo this year. So somebody walks up to you at Paleo FX and they're like, yo, bro, who are you? What are you all about? How would you answer that, my man?
Yeah, so super interesting question. That's always the typical question that people ask, right? Like they say, what do you do? But you put a little spin on it. I actually like to ask people what they're passionate about, because I don't really care what they do necessarily for their work, but I want to know what they are about. So that's a really good question. So, my job is my passion. I'm super lucky with that. I basically have been lifting weights since 14 years old, and I just turned 34. So that's about 20 years now, gym experience, and it never ceases to surprise me. But in each training session, whether it's with me or one of my clients, I am learning more about my mind and my body, which to me is just beautiful, that you can create this connection between those two things and realize that they're actually inseparable. But when people ask me that question, invariably we do talk about the profession. So I always tell people I'm a personal trainer. I used to be a little bit hoity-toity about that and be like, no, I'm a strength coach, whatever. But people understand personal trainer. But I always say I'm a personal trainer and health coach. And they say, oh, what is that about? I say, well, it's about program design. It's about fixing biomechanical issues that may be affecting the client or individual. But the health coaching is really where it's at. And I tell these people, I care more about seeing what hormone status is, what's going on with the gut, the stress, the lifestyle, the relationships, more so than just program design. Because pretty much anyone can go online and find a workout program, and that may or may not serve them. Now, the exercise is going to be dictated by what else is going on in this person's lifestyle. So I've had clients in the past who I made the mistake of giving them a very difficult exercise program. And let's say they're a father of 3 newborns and they're doing this stuff. And then we get them to check some recovery, and their recovery is awful. And I'm like, you know what? It's not your fault that you're getting injured. It's absolutely my fault. Mm-hmm. So I care about the person. I'm passionate about myself and my own training. And that leads me to be a very good coach with other people to see what's going on, whether it's physically, whether it's with their nutrition or their gut status, like we talked about, or with their spirituality. And I'm not claiming to be any sort of guru. I just have my own experience in my own breathwork practice, and I'm a practicing Buddhist. And I find that very serving to me, and it can be very serving to others too, without hiding behind this backdrop of it being a religion. So really, I care about people because I care about myself, and I help myself first so I can help other people better and be fully there for them. So presence is key.
Absolutely. And all that stuff's really cool. It's funny how, I don't know, in our industry, there's a lot of emphasis kind of placed on you've got to have like your super specific niche. And when someone walks up to you, you can just rattle off like 2 sentences, and in what it's supposed to summarize the essence and aura of my divine soul. Like, how could I possibly begin to do that? And so I think to really articulate the essence of who you are, you need a podcast like this where we can just like, let's hash some stuff out. Because we just live in such a world of these glancing interactions and kind of surface level conversations, and that's, I mean, I get it for marketing. For marketing, everybody's busy, so yeah, you kind of for the sake of marketing and just quickly reaching people. But then this is, you got to pull them in of like the more what lies beneath the surface. Let's get to the source. But yeah, so it's really cool. You and I connected through the FDN community, obviously, and I'm like, oh, who's it? I don't even remember how long ago this was, but it's like, who's this guy? Like, he's also a fitness dude turned FDN dude turned just holistic gangster dude, Yeah, and then here we are. But we had that conversation on the FDN Real Results show, which obviously I'm the host of, and we got into this really awesome conversation that I'm sure we'll continue today. But as your kind of Cliff Notes synopsis, speaks to, obviously we can kind of zoom out and really look at this whole holistic health. And so that's where, like with my podcast, with the 4 pillars of functional fitness, functional medicine, functional psychology, and functional spirituality, you literally embody and practice all of those. So I'd love to hear, like, with your clients, you obviously like to do a lot more than fitness. You're doing the fitness program design, but you're also doing a lot of that more. It sounds like you're incorporating a lot more kind of the psychological and kind of spiritual cultivation, or maybe just holding a space for others to cultivate their magic. I'd love to hear how you speak to that, of how you like to bring that style of the way you like to live into your personal practice.
Yeah, it's a really nice question to actually answer. So I've always wanted to give clients what they need. And a lot of times people hire me for the exercise purpose alone, because that's something that I can easily deliver to them, giving them a package and showing up in 60-minute sessions, whatever. But I like to start each one of these sessions with just a really simple catch up, asking them, how are you doing? And not in a way like, Brendan, how are you doing? You're like, I'm fine. How are you? I don't like that. Yeah. I like to say, how are you doing? Actually talk to someone. And if I can see anything on their face, I'm going to ask them about it. I'm like, no. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you say that? Why does it look like your eyes are a little bit swollen? Were you crying? Seeing what's going on before we get into the training, because something like movement I hold very valuable to me. And it's really a way that I connect with myself and with the earth even. Again, that mind-body connection is very important. So talking to people and giving them my services. Yes, we're going to do the health coaching, the lab testing. We're going to do the exercise. We're going to do all this. But really what I'm disguising my services as is someone to be there fully present. And if we can heal some trauma or have someone recognize what's going on in their life that is holding them back from being their greatest self, that's what I want to get to as quickly as possible. Because once they realize that, you can see that every single door in the universe opens to you. You can do whatever you want. But if there are these things that are holding you back, whether it's bad relationships, a poor relationship with food, or could be just lack of sleep and a poor lifestyle, if you can fix that stuff, if you can get to the bottom of that through presence, through good coaching, and through listening, actually being present, I think that makes me the best coach I can absolutely be, because I'm giving you more than you even paid for. I mean, you're paying for a service and I'm giving you much more of that. So actually realize who you are. So I hope that answers the question.
And yeah, totally. Well, and that's the thing. You can't just be a personal trainer anymore. Is ultimately what I maybe I've decided, or at least I'm saying right now on the air. Therefore, it must be something. Yeah, I like hearing all that because, like, for me, I know what year is it? It was about a year, creeping up on 2 years ago, that I completely cut all fitness services because, as you said, the dilemma I ran into was at that point in my life, it felt like, okay, I still have all these people coming to me for fitness, and then I have to then turn and educate them of like, well, yeah, but it's not just fitness. Actually, you need to do 10 lab tests. And of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but nonetheless, I went as far as like, I got to cut all fitness services to kind of narrow the options. And anyways, but then you start running into this of like, well, hang on a second. It's not just the functional healing either. There's the spiritual, the psycho-emotional, which, I mean, ultimately this conundrum is kind of what led to the manifestation of this podcast of like, we just need to start talking about how it really is. Because as you know, as we all know, well, a lot of us know, when a lot of people think, I'm not happy, I don't feel very healthy, I want to work on that. Yeah, fitness is kind of the first thing I think people turn to. Obviously, our society is very kind of programmed to, think of, okay, I got to lose weight, get healthier, because losing weight and getting healthier is obviously the same thing. And then that will fill the void that I'm feeling in my soul, and then I'll have a better life. I'd love to hear you speak to how maybe that's not the right paradigm and how we can reframe that to actually start chasing our best life that we love to talk about, but who's actually taking steps towards.
Yeah. I do think that's a really good thought. And it's funny. I thought about cutting my fitness services as well in the beginning, but, just being in the industry for 10 going on 11 years, I had a really good foothold and realized, hey, maybe I could actually implement more of this functional health lifestyle into the fitness. And, we're our own first guinea pigs when we become FDNs. And I got to that point where, I was crashed and burned because for me, I do value movement a lot. It's been something I've done since I was a little kid. I've never had an issue with weight. I've always had low body fat, looked really good. But my issue came more in this mindset of addiction. And I just know for myself, there are certain things that I have to avoid. I just have that personality that's all or nothing. And it existed for me. I found my happiness with exercise and working out. And I kid you not, this went on for 5-6 years. I would do 2 workouts a day. They were hard workouts. And sure, I looked great. But over time, my energy started failing me and I was not as motivated. This happened right around 30, 31. So 3-4 years ago. And I've had to dig myself out of this hole, but with a lot of questioning and with a lot of work on myself and my mindset, I was wondering, what am I covering up by spending this much time in the gym? Because surely there is a better way. And I approached my health with this all or nothing attitude. And ultimately it led me to a state of being not healthy. So just realizing this, I see and have a lot of compassion for other people because the same mindset, this all or nothing mindset, leads them to making poor decisions with their nutrition, even with their scheduling. People like to brag that they're a workaholic. I personally am not a workaholic. I do not want to be at work all the time. I want to have my afternoons free so I can pursue more of my artistic side of my goals. Just a simple answer right there. But I see a lot of people in our culture. Yes, I think movement is super important. It's necessary. We all need to move. We all need to exercise. But a lot of people fall into this all or nothing trap like I did. And it can be in regard to any of the things that we coach in FDN, whether it's diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. Sure, you can rest too much. You can be totally lazy. You can try and supplement out a poor diet or a poor lifestyle. It's not going to work. There has to be this grand equilibrium. And I found a lot of my personal truth through my spiritual practice and this idea of walking the middle path. And it's something I knew about from the very, very beginning of studying Buddhism right around my mid 20s. But man, I did everything I absolutely could to avoid being in the middle. I made every excuse in the book. And what it requires me to do is be absolutely present with anything that I have going on, whether it's work, whether it's my workouts, my nutrition, just knowing, okay, I can eat this food. It's not going to affect me in the long term. Or I am very balanced with my vacations. I need those times for myself just so I can catch up. So I think I approach my own lifestyle and my training with clients with this middle path, with this presence of just realizing the negative and the positive outcomes of every single decision that I make or that my clients make. And no, it is not easy. And I tell all my clients, no, this isn't easy. Like if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. What you're actually gaining is so much more by having this mindfulness approaching your lifestyle. And for me, that has brought me a lot of success. But again, with this middle path, I'm not holding on to this success like, wow, I did it. I'm done forever. I'm going to be good from here on out. Things constantly change. Flux is normality. We have to realize that things are going to change. They're going to change every single day. And we need to be comfortable being present, being right in the middle, and not trying to control these outcomes so much. I think we would be a lot happier as a nation and as a world if we could just cultivate that presence.
Damn, son. Need to drop this microphone hot quick. You said some pretty profound things in there. Flux is normality, and there was something else that I was like, oh, remember that. And then, of course, it kind of slipped away, and I'll have to watch the recording. But you said some pretty powerful things there, and I think, I really couldn't agree more. It's kind of the duality of existence where there's, shadow and light to every situation. And I like what you're saying about walking the middle path. And, one thing I think too, everybody has their things that they, commit their time, their energy, their attention to. And I think in a way, a lot of times the, health and fitness path very much leads you directly, ultimately, right to a mirror is kind of what happens. You're pursuing. I want to try to articulate this more concisely than I normally would, because as I was hearing you talk, and then even just reflecting on my own journey, and our journeys have a lot of parallels to them. It's like, okay, pursuing fitness. And as you asked yourself, okay, what am I covering up by working out twice a day, every day? Like, is that really necessary? And of course, we love to use fitness talk and fitness science or health science to try to rationalize and justify. Humans will do anything to avoid looking within and to avoid looking into those traumas, those fears, looking inwards. Because that's where the real struggle is. Like, you think doing a hard workout is hard, or sticking to eating real food from the earth, like, oh, that's so hard. No, looking within and facing those fears and those demons, those insecurities. What are the stories that we're telling ourselves? What are our innermost truths? The process of unlearning and shedding all of the faulty belief systems that have been programmed into us. And so that's why I love hearing you say, as you're walking this path, and then you're able to best serve your clients of like, hey, what are we really here to do? Because, well, what brings you in today, Sally Sue? Oh, you want to lose 50 pounds. Okay, great. We can do that. We'll just work out 3 times a week, every week for 3 months, go and get you signed up, contract, all that. But why are you really here? Interesting thoughts. So with your programming and spiritual, certainly I think that it's a hard thing to set clients up with, because again, it's like, well, they come to you for one thing. So how they, and also there's something to be said for, you have to like, respect people's boundaries and layers, and you can't be like over direct. No, I'm just going to knock down, bulldoze through your 10 walls that you didn't even know that you put up between us. So certainly you have to develop that like rapport and friendship and kind of work on crawling over those walls too. Yeah.
Yeah, you really do. I've said Buddhism several times. Like I said, it served me. in a million different ways. I grew up Christian,
Hmm.
but I found that that wasn't really the highest truth or calling for me. And, with the spiritual practice, people are put up a lot of walls against that. And for many reasons. I mean, we have violence coming from religion. We have, fundamentalism coming from it. And I hate to see that stuff happen, but, with my spiritual beliefs, you can relay these lessons. And even with Christianity and the teachings of Jesus, you can relay these lessons without being dogmatic about them. And I think that's very important for certain people because, man, people do have a lot of layers. They have a lot of walls built up. They live inside certain containers. And to be an effective coach, I think it's so funny because everyone knows that a personal trainer isn't really a personal trainer. They're really just a psychologist. And anyone who's been in the gym or had a trainer knows that your clients pretty much tell you everything because they can trust you. You work for them, they can trust you. And it's also a funny job because although someone's paying you, you're the boss. Like I'm the boss with my clients and they all listen to me. It doesn't matter how successful they've been. So I think you do need to be sensitive to what's going on with people, seeing what walls they put up. And it's not about me trying to break down those walls necessarily. It's more about, hey, this has served me and many people. Like, where do you see yourself fitting into this? Is this something that you can overcome by yourself? So really getting to have someone ask these questions to themselves instead of me having to facilitate something. I think that's a mark of a really good coach. Again, to heal some of these traumas or recognize what's going on in their life, the triggers that are causing them to drink too much or smoke too much, or the work environment that's causing them a lot of distress in their life. Like asking these questions, being present with them enough to have them be able to trust you and trust your intentions. And none of this happens if the person asking those questions, me as the coach or you as the health coach, we have to trust ourselves and adhere to that process first. I've always been a really big fan of walking the walk. And my mentor and early coach, Paul Chek, he always talked about that stuff. And you see this guy today, he's like 56 or 57, totally strong, totally ripped, sticks to his nutrition and lifestyle. He never takes a day off because he knows this is the right way to do it. So I know if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to be an effective coach because how can people buy into a system or a program where, their doctor's obese and telling them not to eat sugar, or they don't practice what they preach. So I guess in closing with that thought, I mean, there are a lot of containers that people put on themselves, and we can easily have them be mindful of these decisions and thoughts that they're making in order for them to realize that for themselves, that they need to change or they can change in the first place.
I love everything you just said because, I think what's interesting, like at the end of the day, it's not just like within our work as, health coaches, fitness coaches, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is just kind of a, human phenomena where we're all just kind of mirrors walking around and, we observe ourselves through the mirror of the other person. And, when we encounter somebody else, it's like you can't recognize in somebody else what you don't recognize within yourself. Otherwise, how would you have been able to? And that's something I kind of learned from a friend that just rocked my world. And I was like, well, it makes a lot of sense when you say that. But then the pursuit of enlightenment or the pursuit of a notion, a chosen perceived notion of understanding can get kind of trippy because then if you don't keep checking that ego, and this is something people don't think about, it's a practice. It's a spiritual practice. You don't just, it's like getting in shape. You don't get in shape over the course of 3 to 4 months. And then it's like, well, now I'm in shape, so I'm going to stop working out and I'm just going to stay in shape forever. No, if you don't consistently practice and use it, you'll lose it, obviously. And I don't think people think about life in that manner, or, whether it's spirituality or just they're reading a self-improvement book and a self-help book. But that's kind of thing, as you're talking about, we can't egotistically assume like, well, I'm obviously doing something right, so allow me to subjugate you to my domestication because I'm right, you're wrong. That's why you're in the position you're in. I'm the position I'm in, and you need to start doing things my way. And you spoke to that, eloquently and subtly, where it's like, no, we need to listen. We need to create that safe space, ask those open-ended questions, while all the while we're just being a mirror for them to observe themselves in. But the difference is we're creating that safe space for themselves to be able to observe themselves without judgment. Whereas if they try to go home and stare at themselves in the mirror and do that, I don't know, they might not be able to as well. And the self-sabotage comes in because they don't have that unconditional love from somebody that only wants the best for them.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Brendan. There's so many ways that we can cultivate this self-love, but you're right. A lot of people can't stand to look at themselves in the mirror, and they do need some sort of practice. One thing that I thought about with meditation in particular, when encouraging meditation to people, like, it's not an easy practice, but again, it's a practice. Like, you sit on the mat because you sit on the mat. That's when you practice. And even with a 20-minute, breathing, seated meditation, you may get 3 good minutes in, and then the rest is just thoughts coming in from all sides. And, some capture, some pass by. You may get 3 good minutes. But the important thing is that you sit your butt on the mat or the couch or whatever, and you actually sit down to do it. So many people in my life, including myself, would say that meditation doesn't work for me. Thoughts just come to me and I can't get rid of them. And it's like, well, dude, duh, that's everybody. It's not just you. So don't think it's so exclusive to your mindset. It is about the practice. It is about setting aside 20 minutes every day to do it. And guess what? The Buddhists always say, oh, if you're too busy to meditate for 20 minutes, then you need to meditate for 60 minutes, right?
Yes.
You actually have to do it. And while you were talking, I was thinking about a couple other things. I live in Southern California. I'm pretty much born and raised here. It's my home. And we have a lot of kind of new age type people who are really into stones and spirituality and astrology, whatever. As long as things like this don't hurt people, I am all for them. You can do what you want to do. There may be some validity. Maybe it's been proven. Maybe it hasn't been proven, but good on you for doing something for other people. But one thing that kind of drives me wild is you have this spiritual bypassing that happens a lot. And a lot of these coaches that show up on the scene and they charge these crazy rates and people pay them, $10,000 for the spiritual and business coaching. But it kind of grinds my gears because I've seen it all too many times. Someone will go to a festival, they'll do a hefty dose of psychedelic drugs and think that they have arrived. And this arrival is this awakening, so to speak. And I would say that's much different from enlightenment because, maybe some people have been enlightened throughout history, but it's few and far between, and it's a huge practice. But the spiritual bypassing, we have to be very careful. People thinking they know the answers and they become these gurus. And maybe it's serving for some people, but I don't think it necessarily is for most because you have to do the work on your own. You can't trust someone to say, hey, you're ready, or hey, this is how you get there. You go to the shamanic practice, you take ayahuasca, and you're going to be there. I say no. I've done my fair share of psychedelics. It's been a huge part of my healing for myself and my coaching and my groundedness. But I realize now, you do these trips, you put your mind on turbo drive, but the real the growth happens from your practice after that. Because guess what? You may have the time of your life while you're on a psychedelic trip or a spirit quest or whatever, but it's all about coming back to the real world where all of us live and practicing there. And tasking yourself with that is not easy. I have just noticed in myself, and I'm very proud of myself for being more grounded, for not needing to speak above someone else, to actually listen to them and hear what they're saying, not just thinking about what I'm going to say next. That is not mindfulness. True healing and allowing someone to share with you is about you listening and receiving it with an open heart. And Brendan, that is not easy. It's not easy for someone to share. It's not easy for a practitioner to listen to that person or offer advice after that, or simply just to hear them. But that is the practice. I see that as the beautiful side of life and spirituality. And honestly, man, I feel pretty good about exercise, nutrition, all that stuff. But my true growth helped comes from me helping other people. And that is the pathway for me to get there.
Some good stuff there. I'm glad that you mentioned the listening part, because that's literally something I am always working on more and more. It's so easy we're stuck up in our little monkey minds, and the gears start spinning at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and it's like, oh, I gotta, and it's like, no, you don't gotta. You just stop, breathe, allow it. We're so not in control, and we love to grip so tightly, which I think is where a lot of the suffering comes from, is this reluctance to surrender to the source, and that sounds pretty out there woo-woo, but I mean, fill in the blank, God, universe, like whatever the source is for you, whatever that means for you, but kind of let go of the notion of control, because you never had it anyways. And I like what you're saying too about the psychedelics and all that. I haven't done as much as maybe I would have liked to by this point in my life. And I'm very open to all that, because I do think if you can kind of tap into whatever, but the whole thing is, as you said, well, we live here, not up here. This is our reality. And I think sometimes people sort of justify and rationalize, self-medication really. And it's like, isn't the goal to be able to tap into that kind of fifth dimension of unconditional love, through being present? I have this book in my room, and it says something about, obtaining the life that you desire by being present to the life that you have. And I love everything you're saying about the Buddhism and spirituality, because it's very in alignment. And so the other day I was watching my favorite childhood movie, which was The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. You know this movie?
I sure do.
So as a kid, I was a little martial arts dude growing up. And it's funny, I've been reflecting a lot on this lately, because I'm like, Brennan, you've kind of lost touch with your roots. And I got this picture from my mom, and I'm this weird little gremlin character with, and I'm not even in a Halloween outfit. This is Brennan just being Brennan. I'm wearing, goggles by a campfire. I'm just this little creature, I'm like, what happened to that little creature? And he's like, oh, actually, I'm still that little creature. But I grew up, with martial arts and karate and all this stuff. And I think a lot of those lessons, let me speed this up. I'm just all over the place. But, I think the Japanese culture and the mindfulness, the Zen, the Buddhism, the Bushido, the Taoism, I think all these ideologies really resonated with me, especially being, what I later was diagnosed as ADHD at the age of like 20, 21. So I think, it was a great activity for me to really center myself, and the breath, the movement, the intensity, the discipline, the honor. And what I've really been finding is, where are these morals, where are these ideologies in modern America, or maybe the rest of the world? I can't speak for the rest of the world, but obviously we're caught up in this, Instagram age and instant gratification and blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot of it is, we've really lost touch with the source and ourselves and our innermost truths. And one of the big things, and I'd love, because you're speaking so much about your purpose, right? And that's something that really is scientifically validated as a very necessary part of our biological, need, is we need a sense of purpose. That's really what drives our continuity as a species. And so I think a lot of people have this hedonic approach to life of, which really means to run from discomfort, run from pain and run towards pleasure, rather than being here in the moment and mindful in pursuing our purpose, which always centers around serving others. I'd love to hear you speak to whatever the hell I just said.
Well, a couple thoughts that came up while you were talking about that. And of course, I can only speak to my own experiences. I cannot speak to the rest of the world. Maybe in some instances, the places I've traveled, but we are stuck in a materialistic society. And I do think it's okay to be materialistic about certain things. Like, like the food that you eat. I prefer to eat really high quality, local, fresh, organic food whenever possible. That makes me feel really good, and I'm fine to spend my money on that. And as far as material things like clothes, like gear, I come from more of a minimalistic lifestyle, I guess. And I would rather buy very nice things that are going to last me a long time rather than just buy a bunch of shitty things, to be honest. But you see with Instagram, the instant gratification. On my explore page, there's always this one little square that pops up that says shop. And I'm like, I don't want to see that because I do not care about trying to fill the void in my own life with going to buy shit that I do not need. But so many people are stuck in that mindset. I'm always amazed when I go to the gym and there's ESPN on, and then you have to wait for a commercial break where they're always trying to sell you a new car or a new gadget, whatever. And then the worst one are these pharmaceutical ads, and they make their drug look like it's so good and it's going to fix all of your problems. But you and I agree on this. It's like, well, what's the root of your problem? It's like, dude, you eat too much. Like, you're obese. You need to stop eating sugar. You're diabetic. Like, let's figure that out. You don't need this medication. And ultimately, you are running away from a truth that you already know in yourself, but you may not have the strength to already have a process in order to find that, to unveil that truth. So, you know, it's a tough time that we live in, and you kind of said that we need more FDN trainer types. Like, you know, we just need a lot more coaches. We need a lot more people who are awakened to the fact that, hey, my body can heal itself. I need to treat it with respect. This activity is not good for me or others. I need to abstain from that activity. I need to fulfill my purpose and not have work be my purpose. You know, thankfully, for someone like me and you, we love our work, and I hope other people love their work too. But I mean, money for just to find the end, a monetary goal, it's never going to satisfy you. I think we do need to do some sort of return to what drove us as a child. Those things are very, very important, and reconnecting to that path can lead to so much freedom in the future.
Yeah, some big stuff, you know, and with the kind of Instagram generation crisis thing, you know, we love to kind of jump to these labels, and, you know, for the sake of simplicity, for our cognitive purposes, kind of it's easier to label, you know, something as good or bad. It can't possibly be both because that rattles our, you know, sense of understanding. But like with Instagram, as an example, okay, well, it's a tool. It's a tool that we created. It's a platform we created. So then what do we do with it? And the thing is, you know, we have full control over our worldly experience. You know, I always like to say that our reality is a, you know, a reflection of the projection of our ego or whatever it is. But we manifest our reality through the projection of our beliefs. You know, so I always like to kind of challenge people of like, if you're not happy with your reality, you need to take a look at your belief system and start asking yourself, like, why do I believe in X, Y, and Z? Which also kind of gets back to the story that we tell ourselves of, you know, you're not accomplishing a goal, but then every day you self-sabotage and tell yourself the story that you're limited in your ability to reach that goal. So, you know, I think that's why I love talking about this kind of mindset stuff. And, you know, here we are, two dudes, personal trainers, FDN, you know, we could nerd out on all the specificities, and yet we're not talking about this lab test or that lab test. We're not talking about this kind of exercise or that. You know, we're talking about what really matters and what controls it all up here. And I think that's pretty powerful. I love how you take your own experiences in your own reflection, because we're all here to learn together. And so it's like, as you're coaching these other humans towards your goal, you're also learning all of this about yourself and able to, you know, cultivate that within. And yeah, I don't know. It's cool stuff though.
So I have a question for you. What do you think about the new policy that, I'm not sure if it's coming out soon or it's already out, but Instagram not showing the likes on certain accounts? You know, so it's going to focus people more toward their actual content rather than an inspirational quote and an ass pic.
Yeah, man. I keep hearing about that and I keep waiting for it to actually happen. I haven't actually tuned in to see like when or what. I just keep hearing about it. And, I'll fully admit, because here's the thing, I'm a firm advocate of owning your shit always. And, checking your ego is something you've got to start doing. Like, if people checked their ego more than they checked their phone, then I think we might be onto something. Um, but yeah, I'll fully admit that my egotistical reaction is like, no, I want to see all those many likes that just give me that nice little dopamine boost when I'm wanting it and needing it. But my higher self is like, yes, we need to make some adjustments here. If I could snap my fingers, I would say the likes that you're getting on pictures and all that, kind of need to get away with it, which I will say then we're just a step away from like, well, should we even show how many followers or following an account has? Like, what good is that really doing? Because it's something I thought something I thought about with when you and I were when we were meandering around at Paleo FX, trying to just find cool people to talk to. Scouting the babes, I'll just say it. But something I thought about is how much we might change what we think or what we say based on that preconceived notion. Like, if I'm talking to a total stranger and they're a total stranger, I'm just going to be me. Because who the hell are they? I know who I am. Who are they? Let's find out. But then when it's like, oh gosh, this person has like 200,000 Instagram followers, all of a sudden I'm telling myself that story. I'm not worthy. Who am I to talk to them? I'm nervous. I'm afraid they're going to judge me. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now. Stop. I want to hear your thoughts on that same thing now.
I have been stuck in that same path. By all accounts, I've had a pretty charmed life.
I like that. Charmed.
Yeah. I mean, just being real, star athlete in school, on the front page of the newspaper in our town every week for football or track or whatever, got really good grades, went to good school, had some things happen in my family that were not easy, but we all overcame it. And, first of all, if you're white in America, you have a better chance. And it's unfortunate for those who don't, and that pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. It can be very toxic. I think for me, things have been a little bit easier. I have the right tools, but instead I've struggled in many other ways. Again, with this addiction, I've definitely struggled with addiction and had to find the middle path, as we spoke about. Now, I've suffered from that as well. You see this person, they have 350,000 Instagram followers, or I trained these clients in the beginning of my career and they had more money than they knew what to do with. But ultimately, Brendan, I realized, wow, we can talk one-on-one. And when I would look at them in the eyes, I was just looking at myself. They were that same person that I am with the exact same problems. And at first I was enamored with this wealth that some of my clients have, only to realize as we got closer, wow, I would never want to be them. They have way too many problems because they have not gone inside. They have not searched inside. And instead, they're clinging to this material wealth, and it's causing so many problems in their relationship and their family, whatever. So just kind of getting back to this spiritual space and this awakening that we all have within us, I think if you actually do look someone in the eyes, and not just glance at them, but truly look in their eyes, you can see what type of person they are. You can see what their goals and aspirations are. And you can relay that as a friend or as a teacher or as a mentor. You can help them out. So although, financial freedom is great. You need it. Everyone really should have some sort of financial freedom, but it doesn't mean anything. I mean, the contents of your character are the most important thing. And if you're not able to go to bed every night after looking at yourself in the mirror and being proud of yourself, then I have to say none of that stuff is worth it. So with this Instagram thing, I mean, you and I use it for our business. I would argue pretty successfully. I like it a lot. With kind of the content that I create, I try and do at least 6 posts a week. sometimes I don't have anything to say. And on those days, I take it off. I don't need to communicate with that. Also, having a good relationship with my phone, realizing, hey, if I keep responding to these messages, this other person's going to keep on responding back. I simply don't have the time. So for me, seeing those messages pop up, it's like, okay, it's almost 2:00 here. I don't have time to answer that. Maybe I'll answer it tonight when I don't have anything to do. But my self-love is not paying attention to that. It's about realizing this is my goal, and to get here, I can't be on my phone all day. So good and bad things about social media. I think if you're aware and you have presence about it, about what you're trying to portray, how it affects your business, great. But just scrolling up and down, looking at pictures of half-naked women, there's not a lot of freedom in that. You got to realize that's a lot of your ego. That's a lot of your dopamine receptors going crazy, these actions going on. And I just think it's a huge problem that we need to address. And once you stop doing stuff like that, being addicted to this little device, and you can go outside and you can see the trees and hear the birds, there's a lot more freedom in that.
You know, something I hear you say a lot, and it's something I have historically always said, like, you know, when I'm talking to a client about their, their protocol and, you know, the specificities of exactly, you know, what they need to put in their body and blah, 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 blah. But really, the way I've always described it, you know, it's everything in life is about relationships. You know, it's what kind of relationship do you have with your food? So let's stop talking about what diet you're supposed to be following, and let's start talking about your relationship with your food. Let's stop talking about what type of exercise you should be doing to reach your goal. Let's start talking about your relationship with movement, which you've been blessed by nature to have the capacity for, in a great capacity. I was thinking about it the other day. You know, because I'm a little workout freak, which is always been great. But it's like, can you imagine what a shame it would be to go through life and never fully see what this is capable of, you know, physically, or what this is capable of, you know, intellectually and cognitively. But as you're saying, it's all about that relationship. What's your relationship with social media or your phone? So I think if people started thinking in terms of how's my, you know, how are my relationships in life? Because that's all we have at the end of the day. And I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I could totally, if I'm being completely honest, which I have a faulty nature of being very honest at times, gets me in trouble sometimes. But yeah, I mean, you and I are white dudes in America. Logistically, it doesn't really get much better than that. So I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it. Now, here's the thing, though. You know, and I've alluded to this in previous podcasts, but I think it's worth repeating. But, you know, David Goggins always talks about how, you know, reality is psychological warfare that none of us have training for when we come into this world. And I always allude to that because it's totally true. It's totally true. No matter who you are, what part of the planet you're born into, it is a psychological game of survival that none of us are equipped for. You know, and our parents and our caretakers, they do the best they can, hopefully, assuming that they like love you and stuff. You know, they do the best that they can to set you up for success. And then, you know, insert all of the childhood traumas of failure and abandonment, blah, 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 blah. So someday you're kind of spat out into the world as a, 16, 18, you know, year old adult, whatever it is, when you walk into the world on your own. And then it's just like, where am I? What is any of this? Holy shit. Like, and who am I? You know? And so it all centers from, how's your relationship with yourself? Do you even know who you are? You know? We're never taught this. We're never taught, like, look inwards, find what you're passionate about. So yeah, I think it's a total cluster. But I think one thing that is good about social media is we're connected to anybody in the world, anytime, 24/7. And so what I've been seeing with that is kind of this new movement and really kind of a spiritual awakening. I think we're all drifting as a society so far from our natural roots, and everybody's craving something that feels real in this, kind of very fake empire that we've built around ourselves. And so I think people are craving that, like, get back to the authentic nature. And I do feel like I'm seeing an increasing movement in, hey guys, like, let's raise the collective consciousness and, all this stuff. But I look at it as a good thing. And then, of course, you get the spin-off goofy stuff that's just human ego at play. But ultimately, I mean, we're getting there.
I couldn't agree more. I do think that we're getting there. I think our current political situation and what's going on, and the fact that there still is a lot of this fundamentalism and racism going on, people want change. And I think it's gotten to this critical mass where enough people want change that things are going to start happening. And with this collective consciousness of growing and finding something deeper, and I'm a big fan of this group called the Minimalists, and they have a podcast and documentary and several books. And not everyone needs to be a minimalist, but really this message is about finding the important things in life and recognizing that buying a new Lexus every year is not going to bring you any happiness. You may think these things will cultivate joy, but ultimately they will not. And again, I always go back to this idea that I just mentioned about looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing your eyes and being able to say, John, you did a good job today. You are free to have restful sleep. That is so important to me, that I see a lot of things, and this has changed over time. I see a lot of energy flow, some give and take between myself and other relationships, and kind of this idea of a gut feeling and trusting your intuition. In me, that has grown so much that I really don't have any other choice than to help people in what I've experienced and kind of open them up to this idea. And back on that social media thought that we were talking about, even though I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and a CSCS, whatever these qualifications, I like to bring people into my page, whether it's through, shirtless pics or cool exercises, it doesn't matter. Because if they're reading the caption, they're seeing something that is a truth in my life, something that I've experienced. My Instagram is an entire blog. It's a big diary of everything that I go through and all of the things that I've messed up on in my life. And sharing this with people like, look, this is the problem. This is what I used to do. This is what I now do. And now I experience freedom. So social media can be great. And like you said, we're connected 24/7. I have met such good friends off of social media, including you, and people who I was traveling to their city. We were friends on social media for a few years. And guess what? You hit it off within 1 minute. You're automatically best friends. So for that, it is fantastic. But we have to be so mindful of, again, the materialism, this idea of all these people having a perfect body and no one sees the photoshopping that's going into that stuff. It's not real. And once we experience something real, we can look someone in the eyes, we can share an experience with them, share food, anything like that. It is just the most gratifying feeling that you could ever experience. And I encourage everyone to get real with themselves, because if you don't, you're going to try later on and it may be too hard for you. So if you don't remember that you need to live right now, the only time that you can live is right now, then you will never have that freedom which you desire. And that's a really scary thing, because it's all within our power, but we need to recognize the fact that it is our power to do so.
I love that. It's sharing the journey. And I know, again, it's cool. It's interesting. You and I have very, so many similarities, but also totally like, it's not like if you followed both of us, it's like, oh, I'm already getting all of this stuff from this guy. I don't need to follow. No, it's totally different, because we are two different souls walking two different paths that just happen to run parallel. But I definitely see you doing some of the same stuff I do. And like, I love to have fun with, playing the game of social media, while making fun of it at the same time and trying to wake people up to the game that it is. Like, I'll literally post like, okay, here's a pretty picture of Brennan working out. Look how big his arms are. But then I make fun of it in the caption. I'm like, would you have actually looked at this post otherwise? Because believe me, I mean, I see it. I post like what I think is the coolest science post ever, and it's life-changing scientific info. Nobody cares, man. Then all of a sudden, like, oh, pretty picture, sign me up. But you have to, it's like you got to play the game, but then ultimately you are delivering a meaningful, powerful lesson behind that. And as you said, like and this is all stuff that we know. That's the thing. We all know this stuff. I'm amazed every time I talk to somebody new. Humans are so smart. People are so intelligent. They have such infinite capacity for knowledge and wisdom and depth. I think the problem is people don't use it or cultivate it. And they allow themselves to succumb to the primordial mechanisms that just trap them. I mean, think about how much marketing, how much money goes into the marketing strategies, even just at your simple grocery store. Oh, it's got to be eye height. It's got to be this color because that really triggers this mechanism in the brain that draws you in. And we just fall prey to that left and right. It's really kind of disturbing. Oh, man. So we could spin into 1,000 directions with this conversation. We kind of have been a little bit all over, which I love. Gosh, there was something I was going to say there. Well, so for the audience, the future audience, that's like, what the hell are these guys talking about, man? So let's we'll do a little bit of a gear shift. Of like, all right, we'll cover some pillars here. I want to, like, we could even get some action steps going of like, all right, we've got functional fitness, medicine, nutrition, etc. So one thing I want to hear your perspective on, because I know my answer, but nutrition, right? Everybody is looking for that diet. And we've already, I think, hashed out for a good 50 minutes now that it's not just, your food or your movement. It's all up here in that heart thing, that heart pump. But with nutrition, if somebody says, John, I need a diet. I need a diet that makes me super sexy. What diet should I do, John? How would you answer that?
Yeah, so super good question. I was hoping we talk about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nutrition, as you know, can be so incredibly personalized. I was talking to our mutual friend and one of the FDN leaders, Jen Maleka, this morning about this culture of bodybuilding. And you're a bodybuilder, looking amazing, my bro. You do great with it. But what I like most about you is kind of your philosophy behind that with nutrition. So many people do if it fits your macros. And, maybe it's a helpful place for certain people to start. But typically with these kind of proto bodybuilder, like fitness show people, what they're doing instead is they're trying to do these hacks. They're trying to have these 0-calorie sweeteners. They're trying to eat fat-free cheese, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, well, dude, don't you realize cheese is fat? Like, you're not getting any of the vitamins and minerals if you don't have any fat in there. So I don't really like that because it's this approach of X equals Y, my intake equals my output. And I'm like, that's not really what food is. And, kind of going back to this woo-woo stuff that we're talking about and this energy, food is energy. And if you're eating something that is totally processed, that is dead food. It is not alive food. When you're eating a bunch of greens and like a really good salad or some cooked veggies, you're like, these things are actually alive and they are filling me with vitality. It's hard for a lot of people to realize that because you have to go so deep inside yourself to figure out, man, like I am an energetic being. This is energy that I need from the earth to sustain me. So I guess an easy answer to that question is I'm a big fan of a paleo template. It doesn't need to be called paleo. We don't need to put containers around it, but eating whole, real, unprocessed foods is the way to go. I think most people can agree with that. I generally shift people in the beginning, especially if they are trying to lose some body fat, toward a lower carbohydrate diet. And those things can be shifted around after a course of about 30 days. I like to see people be pretty strict for a period of about 30 days. And last week, I just saw my good friend, Melissa Hartwig, the Whole 30 Mastermind up in Salt Lake City. And I've always been very proud of her program because, love it or hate it, you're getting someone to do an elimination diet, which most people need. People do not realize how much they react to certain foods. You give a lot of people a diet and they're like, oh, but I have to keep my cheese, or I have to keep my Diet Coke. And you got to ask them, well, is your goal to lose body fat, or is it to drink Diet Coke? It's like,
right.
you gotta get your shit together. So I do like elimination diets. A lot of people that we deal with in FDN, they may need something like an autoimmune protocol. I know for me, I have to kind of stick in that realm. Otherwise my gut is just not happy. So the answer is whole unprocessed foods. I'm a fan of meat, but the meat has to have lived a good life. And yes, we have to kill animals. And I don't know if there's a justification around that. I know that eating animals makes me feel really, really good. It makes me feel full of life. My justification in myself is that these animals have to live a good life, and their energy is passing on to me. So I am not going to waste that food. I am going to use that energy that they provide, and I'm going to go out into the world and do my best to make the world a better place. So yeah, I would say something like a paleo nutrition plan. And obviously you and I would do a lot of testing to see what would be ideal for an individual, and we would go from there.
I love hearing all that. Maybe that was me looking to a dear brother for confirmation bias. I'll call myself out on it. No, I've got to say, I have so much fun checking my own ego. It's become such a regular part of my spiritual practice of like, oh, there's that BV ego. I see you. Like, calm down there, little fella. Yeah, but with the nutrition thing, my God, have we overcomplicated it? And again, this is where I'm just gonna say it, and people can get mad at me later when I post this episode. But with all the, again, notion of control, the perceived notion of control, which is not the same thing as a literal ability of control. But well, I'm just going to count my macros. I'm going to, eat this, not that. I'm going to, keto, carnivore, vegan, fill in the blank. We could literally go all day about this. And as you said, though, earlier, with working out twice a day and spending, is that really necessary? What are you avoiding actually dealing with through all this very trivial bullshit? Because and one thing though, and here's the thing, I'm being a little facetious. I'll call myself out on it because you got to have fun with it. But I think you and I, we do have to give ourselves credit of we have been intensely pursuing our paths for a long time. There's and that is something that maybe doesn't get enough perspective. It's like, okay, well, you do realize gosh, I had somebody say something the other day, Brendan, you've been working out? And it's just like, only 6 days a week, every week for the past, like 20 years of my life. So I'm glad that it shows, but thank you. But with nutrition, getting back on track with my squirrel moments, all this hyper control, let's make it more complicated. How many ways can we play around with our macros and, this and that? And, well, if we only have 3 macros, let's eliminate all the fat. Well, we tried that. That didn't work. Okay, well, now let's do all fat and 0 carbs. Okay, well, that's what everybody's doing right now. How is that working out? And I just always shake my head, and it's like, how about we just eat organic plants and animals? I used to say, why don't we just eat real food? But I found that wasn't specific enough, and people got confused. Yeah. So then now I like to say, let's eat organic plants and animals. And Whole30 as an example, I don't ever like referring to diets, even, I don't even use the word paleo because people ask me all the time, Brennan, what do you eat? And I'm like, real plants and animals. What do you eat? Like, I eat the food that our species has evolved off for the past 200,000 years. What are you putting in your gas tank? But Whole30 though,
yeah, pure ketones, bro. Just drink ketones all day long.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I just drink. I won't name any brands because I found big businesses don't like being mentioned by name apparently. But let me just drink ketones all day, and I'm sure I'll never have to eat. I have a book above me that's like about frugivore, just eat pure fruit, which from a anatomical, physiological, there is a little bit of an argument of like, okay, our closest genetic relatives are the, gorilla and the bonobo, which is type of ape, like 98, 99 point something percent identical DNA genetics. And yet, okay, who's on which side of the glass when you go to the zoo? So the frugivore, because these monkeys, they are frugivores, they anatomically are best equipped to digest and absorb nutrient from fruit. Some vegetation, absolutely. They eat a lot of vegetation. At the end of the day, a species is going to eat whatever the hell they can get their hands on for the sake of continuity and survival. But, gorillas and apes, they really like fruit. However, I did some homework on this in case you can't tell. But there are some that hypothesize it was when our species started eating meat, which is obviously more calorically dense. So think about this. You've got this, 700-pound gorilla sitting there, and they're eating all day, every day. Think about how many pounds of plant food that gorilla has to eat to sustain life. What's the basal metabolic rate of an 800-pound jacked gorilla? It's got to be pretty damn high to get all that from plant food. You've got to eat constantly. And then that means there has to be ample food in the environment for you to survive, let alone thrive and then reproduce, let alone then have the energy to evolve over the course of Darwinism over many, many years. So my long-winded point being, the idea is when we started eating calorically dense meat, that is essentially what unlocked our capability to evolve and develop higher cognitive cerebral function. And of course, now then people take it to the extreme of, okay, carnivore. We're supposed to eat only meat, carnivore. What a conundrum, John Parker.
It truly is. And this stuff, it baffles me when I study it. And I try and be open with this stuff because, again, if I don't like dogmatism, I can't be dogmatic towards other beliefs. The fruit thing is a super interesting one to me because, hey, fruit tastes delicious.
It's
Number
amazing.
one, if you don't eat a bunch of sugar in your diet, you have a nice, juicy orange or something. It is the best thing ever. And for me, that's like the only cheat I need.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense in a lot of other ways. I mean, when I eat red meat, I honestly feel the absolute best. I just feel mentally clear. I feel a lot of energy. My muscles get bigger. My energy's super strong. So I know that it's serving me. I was going to ask you though, I haven't kept up necessarily with the evolution of the human species. And I know there are all these alternate theories about why this happens. But one that I remember from high school, maybe even college, was you talk about this meat. When you get a taste for meat and you have this energy, humans are more likely, they start to develop more teamwork to take down these bigger animals. And from doing so, you have this cooperation with a group. So you already have this tribe that's living together. And then this cooperation, which like it would help the brain evolve even more. And then you introduce something like weapons. We already know from our relatives, the apes, that we have these really nice shoulders, which are great at brachiation. So brachiation is just holding on to something or swinging from a vine or swinging from a branch. These shoulders are also really good for throwing. They're really good for throwing spears. Or have you ever seen someone throw a baseball like a professional pitcher? It's like, whoa, that's a full body integrated movement with a lot of width coming from the shoulder to get this baseball going 100 miles per hour. So something went on there. It makes a lot of sense to me that, okay, I mean, this teamwork probably led to brain gains. And then you have these calories that you're not constantly walking around all day long, chewing on fiber, finding fruit, et cetera, et cetera. You have more time for this evolution. And then one more point that I always thought was super cool is that, it's been said that humans are born to run. And there was that book by, I forget, something McDougall, I read that book. I don't necessarily like his authorship, but I read the book, and talking about this long distance running that we're really good at. What I've more recently heard is, we have this giant Achilles tendon, and humans have really big glutes. Obviously, we're bipedal, so we stand straight up. We're capable of generating a lot of force from our legs, which is great if we want to sprint. This idea of persistence hunting has always been super, super interesting. So maybe you injure an animal, but the animal doesn't die out. Maybe it, runs an additional 2 miles. But as humans, we don't have fur on our skin. Instead, that we sweat through our pores, so we can last a lot longer in pursuit. This 2 hours to get this downed animal, who eventually is going to die of exhaustion, or it's going to be on the ground of exhaustion. And that's when we come up and kill it, and then we skin it, we get the meat, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not exactly sure what happened 200,000 or 300,000 years ago. It's very, very interesting. I don't know if we'll ever find the answer during our lifetime, but I do know that there are a lot of ways that we can optimize our nutrition, but it takes a lot of work. If you told me to eat a certain way, I might try it and it may not work for me at all. So it's really our responsibility as people to experiment with that stuff, but try and go to a good coach first, because they're going to lead you down a better path than, just eating raw fruit or just eating things that fell from a tree. It's all about experimentation. So some random thoughts on that.
No, I love it. Now we're getting into the weeds and stuff of just, but this is good though. And, here's the thing, everybody that knows me knows I'm a huge science nerd. I own that. I love it. It's very cool. But the thing is, I'm not a petri dish scientist. I don't like studying things, to the super in-depth level in an isolated. It's always, well, let me study it to the most in-depth level possible in order to apply it to common sense, to our past, and looking at evolution. Because when you start looking at some of these functions and things about the body and health and all of that, well, when you look at where we came from, it makes a lot of sense. And also kind of this idea of like, we're still evolving. Every day that goes by is another opportunity for kind of Darwinism and evolution to kind of propel us forward. And I wouldn't say that the human species has like the best looking current trajectory. I think we've gone a little askew, a little awry with our current path. And right now we're all kind of, the buffalo stampeding towards the edge of the cliff. And it's like, ooh, we might want to make a little bit of a course correction here. But even still, like for example, something that really fires me up is the environmental toxicants. The millions of pounds of environmental of chemicals that we're just dumping into the environment. Don't get me started on glyphosate and blah 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 blah.
For sure.
Talk about all that all day. And the problem is we're killing the planet and ourselves faster than we can evolve. Evolution takes a long time. Like whatever works will continue. Whatever doesn't, and that's, people need to simplify it instead of thinking about, well, how did we evolve to be able to digest? And it's like, simplify it. If it works, it will continue. If it doesn't work, it's not going to continue. And so like with the environmental toxicants, okay, all these plants, well, more so the animals, I would say. Plants, I don't know. Plants can do stuff that obviously animals can't. But animals are dying off very rapidly. There was that study by the Living Planet report, basically showing we've killed off or we've eradicated like 48% of biodiversity since 1970. AKA, like within the past 40 years, we've killed off half of everything that lives on the planet. How is that possible? But then you think about, okay, well, in the past 40 years, look at the rapid manifestation of all these chemicals that never previously existed, and how much of this shit we're dumping into our food and the environment left and right. And the problem, these animals, they can't filter, their water the way that we can. They can't buy, I'm going to buy organic when I'm hunting and gathering. It doesn't work that way. So it's up to their organs to filter this shit that we created. And they don't have the detoxification mechanisms and systems and biochemistry to be able to handle it. And so they're all dying. Now, certainly there's something to be said for, well, we've created a new stimuli, specific adaptation to imposed demand. So theoretically, if we don't kill ourselves, our body's detoxification systems are probably going to be way more robust, 1,000 to 100,000 years from now, assuming we don't kill ourselves off. But anyways, you kind of see where I'm getting with this. And I love, I guess, the thought process that we're both kind of getting at is, let's look at what's natural. And we've drifted so far from that. Like literally, and then I'll shut up, I swear. But the other night when I was watching that Last Samurai, I was just so into it. It was such a thing for me. So then I'm, Googling samurai, which, by the way, the word samurai means to serve. I forgot about that until I watched the movie, and I, had to whip myself a few times for forgetting, but it means to serve. Talk about what's your purpose: to serve, grace most involves to. So it's like, I found my purpose. I want to help other people find their purpose. But anyways, samurai. Okay, so then this picture pops up. It was like Wikipedia, a real picture of a dude in samurai armor, dated 1860. Hang on a second. You're telling me that less than 200 years ago, people still dressed up in armor and carried swords? And now we're recording a podcast from hundreds of miles away. So my weird point being, look at how much life for the human species has changed in the past 20 years, 40, 50. 1820s to 1920s, like, okay, if we're thinking Japan, we can think like samurai walking around with swords. In the 1920s, that's Great Depression era, or the pyramids to 1820s. Okay, pyramids, Civil War, times are different. But then you look at just 1920 depression to 2020, it's unrecognizable. What the hell just happened? This is what happened. Chemical manufacturing is what happened. That's why none of us know which way is up.
So I'm with you, bro. It can be kind of scary when you think about that. When you said the 1860 to 1920 and Great Depression and, the start of the automobile, I think that was actually in the 1800s. But obviously with this mass production after the Industrial Revolution, things started getting a little bit weird. One thing I thought about, though, is, there'd be so many people who argue about organic versus non-organic, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I can't see this argument for non-organic. Yes, I know we have to feed a lot of people, but why would you want a chemical in your body that's not supposed to be there? In my perspective, I'm trying to do as best as I can to avoid certain things that I know could be bad for my endocrine system, my lungs, whatever, because I know every time I go out driving, I'm going to be ingesting some sort of fumes from the car in front of me. And we can't really avoid that. But what we can do are things like the infrared sauna. We can take binders. We can eat organic food just to try and limit all that stuff coming into the body. I wish people had more of an understanding about that stuff. And yeah, it's a little bit scary because you realize all the stuff that's happening with us. But you were talking about just a return to natural living. Mm-hmm. And we all have to find some sort of balance with that because most of us live in cities. I'm more in the suburbs right now, surrounded by a bunch of trees, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But as you've seen on my social media, I am always taking hikes. And I've never really been able to pinpoint what the number one reason I do that for is, but I'm starting to think now because it grounds me. Mm-hmm. There's no Wi-Fi out on the trails. There's no noise or light pollution out on the trails. It's just you listening to your own thoughts and the sound of your breath. And for whatever reason, maybe it was instilled by evolution, but that's really powerful for us to be doing something where we're isolated, we're working hard. One of my buddies and I have always talked about we learn the most from ourselves through suffering. And we mean physical suffering, climbing mountains, realizing, oh man, I got to the top, I'm awesome. But then also saying, oh man, now I'm just halfway done. So I have to get to the bottom of the mountain with my car, whatever. So I think a return to natural living needs to happen. And I think there are good people out there promoting such things and camping and enjoying the national parks, which, by the way, belong to all of us. If you pay taxes, the national parks are yours, and I encourage you to go explore them. They are a small fee, but it's well worth it. Anyway, just some thoughts on that, Brendan. But I would be remiss if I did not ask you what your functional movement practice is like and how you structure your workouts, because I know you're an absolute beast. You've got the good body for deadlifting and can pull, 600 pounds. So I know everyone's dying to know what your workout is like.
Yeah, that I think that will be. We'll get onto a little bit of a fitness tangent, and then we'll probably wrap it up so I don't take your whole day. But yeah, a return to what's natural. I think we can kind of. I'll have to title this episode like two holistic bros ramble about spiritual life and shit. I think that might be the title. That might have to be it, but. You're exactly right, and that's again where believe me, I'm a pretty cerebral dude. I like getting into these kind of mind bending conversations and stuff, but ultimately, like, it doesn't need to be that complicated, which is something that I hope people kind of hear and latch on to, of the simplicity. Let's look within, the mindfulness. Let's be here right now, understanding ourselves, connecting with the natural world. And I do to that point, and then I'll answer your question more directly, but I do think with time, and I won't go on the tangent, but I do think 50 years from now we might find ourselves where our society, and it always starts from the top, it's the trendsetters, and then it kind of waters its way down. That's just the way it all works. But I do think and we're already seeing it, though. We're already seeing it with like the holistic movement. I think holistic health and functional medicine and fitness, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, is kind of a luxury, if we're being honest. And, we could talk about that all day. But it's a return to natural, and a return to nature. And I think what we will start seeing more and more in the coming years and coming decades is this kind of hybrid where we are living a more natural lifestyle, but it's interwoven with technological advances. We're not going to get rid of technology, but are we always going to confine ourselves in because right now we're trapped and we're suffocating in our pseudo world that we've built around us, quite literally. And I think we are going to make a shift. But anyways, fitness, though. Yeah, let's talk about fitness, so that way the people know how to work out after they listen to us blabber. So yeah, I'm excited to hear yours as well. So to the audience, I just sent JP a message the other day, and I was like, "Yo, bro, I wish you could train me." You know what I'm saying? But really, like, the idea of like, to have the full trust and ability to kind of surrender, which is a theme for me, surrender control of my exercise regimen, and know, like, my homie's got me. So if I just want to be a savage over here. I don't want to think about it. I just want to tell me what to do, coach, and I'm going to savage that shit up.
Hell yeah.
And then, like, hey, 3 weeks in, hey, bro, my delts are disappearing. Can we? Okay, cool. And we're good. We're good to go. But yeah, I currently, the holistic savage workout routine, is really a hybrid thing. I could go on and on and on. And that's where people have to realize it's a manifestation of many, many, many years of trial and error and experimentation. But ultimately, right now, these days, it's kind of one of those, I work out the days I feel like working out, which is usually 6 days a week. But hey, if I wake up, I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to do it. But really, it's a combination of a lot of nature walks, some yoga, usually once or twice a week. I love running, never more than 3 miles, never less. It's always 3 miles as fast as I can. I've got this kind of 4-day antagonistic hypertrophy / powerlifting / functional bodybuilding kind of workouts. Those are my strength workouts. I work out 1 day a week with a trainer, and literally I told him, I was like, hey man, I want you to make me hurt, make me suffer. I want it to be functional bodybuilding kind of shit. Let's do it.
Nice.
And that's kind of my current, it never looks exactly the same week to week, but it's a lot of the same stuff on a weekly basis. Yeah.
I got you.
And I can deadlift. My current highest max ever was 650. That's my ego speaking.
Oh,
yeah, 650 is the most I've ever pulled. However, I'm not really a 1 rep max kind of guy. So honestly, I'm more impressed by myself by being able to pull 545 for a set of 4 rather than 650 for that one. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Just gonna throw it out there.
As far as applicability, I think like that 3RM or 2RM is probably more important. Like how many times can you do it?
Right.
I grew up, playing football and we always lifted. So it was always about that 1RM. Right around the time that I realized how bad my HPA axis dysfunction was, I was just trying to deadlift as much as I could. I'm like a pretty medium guy. I'm not huge, but I've always been super strong. So I think it was 2017 I got my max dead. It was triple body weight and 500 pounds exactly. So at that moment, I was like, I'm probably strong enough to do whatever I want to do.
Right.
I don't need to be much stronger than triple body weight deadlift and double body weight back squat or whatever. Those markers can be important. They can be a lot of fun, but I never do that stuff with my clients unless they're specifically training for powerlifting or Olympic lifting or whatever. But I like your approach, bro. I think it's good. I think that integration of the mind and body that we've been talking about this entire conversation, although for some it can be great to follow an exercise program to reach specific goals, I personally have never really followed a program. I kind of do the same things over and over again, maybe with some variety here and there, but I basically go off of how my body feels. Mm-hmm. Now, I know I'll probably lift, heavier than most 3 times per week with the same goals. I want to maintain my strength. So that's usually with some form of powerlifting, back squats, deadlifts. I usually do more pressing movements with kettlebells or dumbbells just to spare my shoulders a little bit. So definitely the powerlifting for strength maintenance. And I do a lot of actual power work, not power lifting, which is usually, it's more of slow strength, but very high load, high tension. So in place, I'll do plyometric exercises from my track and field days. I'll do a lot of single leg work. One of my big focuses over the past year, I really, really dig this, is I do a very controlled eccentric motion on whatever exercise I'm doing. So let's just say it's a Bulgarian split squat. I'm really settling into that bottom position, keeping a lot of tension. So I get a lot of that active mobility. So my brain can learn new range of motion. But on the way up, on the concentric, I do it very fast. So going slow on the way down and going as fast as I can under control on the way up. And I've found for me, I've always been like a really springy guy, super fast sprinter, really good at long jumping and high jumping. That helps for me to maintain a lot of power. And do I need power? I mean, I'm not playing a lot of sports, but it's a lot of fun. I like to jump. I like to have fun with little kids. So that's always really good. Big fan of kettlebells. You know me, I like my club work too. That's a lot of good variety. That's not super hard on the body. Lots of mountain biking because it's summertime. I try and do cardio, like real cardio, maybe for an hour at a time, 2 to 3 times a week. And I mostly do that because I love the way it makes my body feel. It helps to control the body composition, burn a lot of body fat. But really, I commit myself to doing cardio for my brain health. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've suffered from some depression in the past, and that is just one of the easiest ways. The entire time you're like, I don't want to fucking do this. I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. And you get done with like your hour-long trail run or your mountain bike, and it's so epic, and you have these endorphins. And man, talk about being high. There's no drug that's better than that runner's high feeling. So lots of cardio. I do a lot of mobility work. Usually my warm-up is 10 to 15 minutes, a lot of mobility work, making sure that I'm keeping the joints nice and lubed up, staying healthy. I'm actually a big fan of stretching too. There are a million modalities out there where you're stretching slow, you're doing this mobility work. I like some good old fashioned controlled static stretching at the end of my workout. and again, right before bed, because it gets the blood flowing. And man, your sleep latency is like 1 minute. You get in bed and you're like, so relaxed and fall asleep. So I'm kind of like you. I do the cardio. I focus more on low intensity cardiovascular exercise rather than the high intensity. The high intensity stuff is all the strength and power work, but I'm not getting on, one of these classes that promises HIIT training. And I've talked about this before. The reason I'm not a fan is, first of all, I don't think people are strong enough to go at high intensities. And I personally am not willing to wait 4 days for my body to recover before I train again. I don't need that. My diet's super good. So body comp is already really good. I have low body fat. So the low intensity stuff, less wear and tear on the body. And I think it's better for most people. So that's kind of what my exercise is about.
Yeah. Train smart, not harder. How are you doing on time before I ask you another question?
Probably got about 10 more minutes. Does that work?
Yeah, we can make do with 10 minutes. So I think, again, with, exercise, people just overcomplicate it and overthink it. And it's always one of those like, well, get moving, do what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep doing it, which is kind of a problem. And this is something that you pretty much need to do kind of every day for, the rest of your time on Earth, unless you'd rather wheel around in like an automated scooter, which is probably not ideal. But yeah, people get really, so if somebody were to come up to you and be like, hey bro, I need to start moving, I need to start exercising, how do because there's so many like literally I've been wearing a CrossFit shirt, my $1,000 CrossFit shirt from CrossFit HQ when I went through their level 1 coach thingy. But there's so many options, and again, how is the average bear supposed to know what the hell they're supposed to do? So how would you advise somebody like that?
Well, I would tell them to start walking first. I'm a big fan of walking. It's highly underrated, especially if you live in a place with hills. Go walk. I mean, even if you're just on concrete, you're getting a lot of good hip extension. You're moving your body, promoting blood flow. So I'm a big fan of doing that. I actually had one client who I walked with him through his neighborhood for the course of probably a year or two, and he lost 70 pounds just doing that. Now, I am a strength coach. I think that the biggest bang for your buck as far as healthy aging, being strong, being flexible, lowest hanging fruit is strength training. And it's kind of the stuff that you and I do. It can include some corrective work or functional bodybuilding. Big fan of functional bodybuilding. It's not just about the aesthetics. It's about getting the length in the muscle tissue. It's about tendon strength. It's about bone strength. So, there are a lot of online resources. I think a lot of people need their hand held in the beginning. So I would encourage them to find a really good personal trainer. And they don't have to be, an older trainer with 10 years experience. They can be someone who's very enthusiastic and younger, but knows the ins and outs of training and what it means to be able to resist rotation, anti-rotation exercises, hinging, squatting, pulling, pushing, the very basic human movements. That's going to be enough for most people. If you could do that twice a week, I think that would be the minimum. But if you want to actually get somewhere, 3 times a week would be fantastic with a lot of walking. And then I always encourage people like, yeah, you're going to get big muscles if you lift weights, but I'm telling you, if you just focus on nutrition and dial that in, you're not going to need all the stuff that you think you need.
I love that. Simple, effective. Everybody's looking for that, quick fix, the instant gratification. And even though we all know that doesn't exist, and yet people keep reaching for it. It's interesting. Man, yeah, I tell you what, I really could keep going and going. We could talk all day, and I'll be coming out to San Diego, obviously. Definitely in November. It'd be cool to come out sooner if I can swing it. But
anytime, bro.
Sounds like I'm crashing on your couch in November. That's what I heard.
Yes, you are, man. I can't wait for you to be here. I'm going to show you all the good spots.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll have to do like an episode 2 or something. Like, oh, now these fools are in the same room. Y'all don't even know what's up. Well, shoot, this has been really good, man. I'll let you, I know you've got some clients. Oh, I do want to, I'm going to say this and then I'll let you go. So okay. I saw your post A woman had been stung by a jellyfish or a stingray or something not good, and is in a lot of pain and bleeding. And then JP on the scene, I picture Dwayne Johnson in the Beach Watch movie or whatever, storming over there. But then I read your post. It was really, I'm being facetious, but it was really a super beautiful post. And she's like, they ask you what you do, and you tell her that you're a trainer, and they ask you, well, what are you training for? And you say, this. That was some powerful stuff, man.
Yeah. So I knew I had to relay that story, and I've been a writer since I was young. I was a history major, so it was a lot of writing. I've always really enjoyed it. And I wanted to make it flowery to capture people's attention. And if they read it, maybe they'll actually get the message.
Right.
The post wasn't supposed to be like, look at me, I'm so great, I'm so strong. It's like, no, I know I'm fucking useful because I'm super strong. I can carry shit. One of my clients last week asked me, she's like, oh, will you and this guy help me carry this chair? I'm like, no, but I'll carry it. So I did it for her. It takes no time. And I mean, if you have any sort of gifts, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's physical strength, we owe it to each other to help each other out.
Yeah.
That was so easy to carry that girl. And she wanted to give me like a reward or a gift. I'm like, you don't owe me anything. I like to think if I were in trouble, you would help me too. So God, it's so easy to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Why don't we just do it?
Oof. That wasn't even planned or scripted or prompted, but that's literally like the best way to end the show, because I couldn't agree more. I really do think amongst all the self-love stuff that's floating around, which is great, we absolutely need to learn how to love ourselves unconditionally in order to learn how to love everybody else unconditionally. And it starts here with the self. However, I think I see it going too far where people are getting very preoccupied and it's all about me, 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 me. And if I don't do my 2-hour morning routine where I, and all my self-care before I begin my day and start, looking to serve others, I can't possibly function. It's like, hang on, guys. I think we're skewing this a little bit. But exactly as you said, I think we really owe it to ourselves and others to share the amazing gifts that we all inherently have, and it's not that hard to make the world a better place. And I think if we really took the time to look inwards and cultivate our gifts and share that with the world, we can. And so that's kind of the whole thing of like, well, why do you do all these things? And it's like, because I can, and it's the right thing to do.
The right thing to do. My bro, so much gratitude for being on here with you.
Yeah,
and
man.
I always look forward to our time together. You are an enlightening soul, and I'm happy to have you in my life.
Back at you, bro. Really. And we'll have to do episode 2 one of these days, and hopefully people can get something good out of this conversation. But such an honor, my man. Go change some good lives, do your thing, work your magic, share it. We'll talk soon, man.
All right. Talk to you soon, bro.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye.